I'm Luke Kelly, and I'm the founder of the Line and Length movement, dedicated to ripping the covers off mental health stigma. After a rough spell with my mental health, I contacted a large number of mates to come together to play a game of cricket with a very unique point of difference. In between innings, a supportive platform was provided where those who felt comfortable showing some vulnerability openly spoke about their personal mental health journey. Thus, the Line and Length movement was born. While we are not mental health experts on this podcast, we are always here to support. So if you or anyone you know is feeling a bit flat, please have a talk to the experts like Lifeline, Beyond Blue, or a medical professional. Today's episode is sponsored by Picker Financial Solutions. The support that Justin Picker is providing will go a long way in assisting the Line and Length movement in ripping the covers off mental health. While we here at Line and Length focus on mental health, Picker Financial Solutions can help you with your financial health. And now, on to this week's episode of This Is Your Line and Length.
All right, g'day guys. Welcome to this week's episode of This Is Your Line and Length. I'm your host, Aiden, joined here by regular Luke Kelly. How are you, mate?
I'm going well, mate. I'm going well.
And we've got this week's sort of special guest, Janoah Van Kekem. How you doing, mate? I haven't butchered the name too much, have I?
Mate, you've absolutely nailed it. I'm happy with that compared to what I get used to sometimes. So you've done well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Janoah, we're
like
excited to have
like
you
me
on.
calling you Noah. Like me calling you Noah about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, mate.
Just left that.
yeah, you really nailed that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right, you're trying your best there, Kels.
Bloody hell.
Now, Janoah, we're excited to have you on. You're doing some really cool stuff around sort of mentality and meditation, as well as in the men's space as well. But before we dive into that, can you give our listeners a bit of a brief run through of who is Janoah?
So currently I have sort of two roles at the moment. So one is running my business, which is around meditation and mindset work. And then the other is a business with two other colleagues and mates, which is focused around men's wellness and performance and sort of mental health as well. And so in terms of who I am, that, you know, what part of myself I bring through to both those businesses is I'd like to look at my approach to be slightly a bit more rough around the edges and a bit more raw. And so particularly the meditation space and even the way my brand is set up, you know, it's Mind Maverick, is currently in both those areas, I suppose, there's a lot of negative stigma, a lot of uncertainty around it. And it can feel a little bit sort of woo-woo and who the fuck knows and all the rest. So one thing that I'm really big on is trying to normalize both those spaces. And like me as a human being, like I meditate every day, but I still go out and have a good time and drink coffee and drink booze and, you know, muck around the lads. And I'm really big on bringing that sort of normality to the work that I do and try to stay away from getting too caught up in some of the traditional sort of staunchness that can go along with certain modalities or way of doing things. And so that's a bit of a rough mismatch of the two things that I do, but also how I like to do them.
So, Jonah, am I right in that you're the founder of the Mind Maverick Meditation and you're the co-founder of the Momentum Lifestyle Project? Have I nailed that?
Correct.
Perfect. Well, so what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first?
Mate, meditation, dude. So
yeah.
I've been meditating for about 8 years, and prior to me learning to meditate, I was like skeptical, anti-spirituality, sleep without TV in the background, and so I was never satisfied with where I was at. Yep. But I was also too headstrong. I was like, no, none of that weird stuff.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I started meditating, I learned to meditate because I met some people who I thought were normal that meditated. Yeah. And then I started researching meditation. It was just such a common theme between high performers, like whether it was NBA, like Phil Jackson of the Bulls, and LA Lakers, Seattle Seahawks, you know, Ray Dalio, who CEO of Bridgewater, the biggest hedge fund in the world, arguably. Like, it was just this theme around performance and meditation. I was like, whoa. And so I learned and then just stuck with it. And the transformation that I saw within myself and my experience of life was profound. And that led me then to decide to want to become a teacher, but in my own kind of way. And I'd been teaching for about a couple of years. So my two business partners with Momentum Lifestyle Project, Dylan Ruse and Blake Worrell Thompson, and Blake and I have been mates for years in Sydney. And he also is a lifestyle performance coach, and Dill's been working with this old man with the Ruse Men's Club. So we'd all been sort of doing our own bits and pieces and had our own strengths and skill sets. And we sort of came together when a few people had mentioned to us, like, should you look at the men's space? Look at the men's space. Look at the men's space. And we were like, oh yeah, I don't know, maybe. And that's kind of how it evolved. So I was definitely, meditation was what brought me into the space of doing the work. And from there, I've studied all sorts of different stuff. So that was kind of like my gateway drug to the space, I suppose.
So what did it look like at the start when you said you met those people that were sort of like normal per se, doing it? What did their meditation sort of look like that sort of lured you in?
Mate, it was more around how they carried themselves in the world. So I used to work in a previous life, only a couple of years ago, I worked for an alcohol company. So I was a sales estate manager for an alcohol company. I was with them for 7 years. Prior to that, I was in corporate, and they were actually one of my clients. And so they owned like this cool restaurant in Sydney, cafe, and she had like her own PR company, and her partner had he had a vodka brand at one point, had a fashion label, and they were just cool people who are operating at this high level. And I was really attracted to them as human beings. I was like, oh, what's going on? We drink coffee every week and talk about the life and solve the world's problems. And I still remember to this day, he said to me, I've learned to meditate. My daughter and / business partners become a meditation teacher, and she's studying to become a teacher, and I've learned. And he goes, I just wish I'd learned this when I was younger. And that for me was like I was like, right, this guy who I respect, he was a hard ass too. And I was like, this guy who I respect is saying this. And that was kind of that moment for me, which really got me thinking and got me out of my own way, to be honest, to actually give it a crack.
Yeah. Nice.
How difficult was it to sort of start in that meditation space and get into that?
It was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So at first, when I remember going to learn, I was like standing out the front of the place where I was going to learn, and I was like, fuck, if anyone might see me here, like that. I was just like, this is embarrassing. And I remember I learnt, and it cost me a bit of money. The technique that I learned was using a mantra. It was called Vedic, and it cost me over $1,000 to learn. So it was the first time I'd ever invested really in myself as well. So there was a bit of nerves in my mind. I was like, am I just getting duped here by some culty thing, And that was all going through my mind. And so, but I had this underlying knowing. I was like, I can be better. Like, I'm not where I want to be at right now, and I'm not sure what that looks like. Getting shit faced every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then going back to the week again and working my way up through the standard, career path didn't seem like the thing for me. I was like, I am more than this. I didn't know what that meant. And so I was like, you know what, let's go. And so that was how I began. And then for the first bit, I kept it really quiet. Like, I sort of just did my thing in the background. I stuck to it because I was like, I invested this money. I want to see if this actually works. And I stuck with it, but no one would have really known about it. And the beauty of it is the style that I learned. You do it like twice a day for about 20 minutes, and you can do it anywhere. Like, I'll do it in my car in between meetings in a car park. I'd do it on a park bench with my sunnies on with my earphones in. It looked like I was having a nap. And so the beauty of it is I do it on the bus, in between going somewhere. So the beauty of it was so easily integratable into my life, and I could sort of get away with doing without it looking too, there's no weird poses or anything like that. So I could sort of slump my way like this. It's like I was sleeping. And that's how I began with integrating it into my world for a bit of awkwardness.
It's good that I can hear you say like you were a skeptic at first and you overcome that, because in all honesty, there is still that skepticism out there about this whole mindfulness approach. But I've said this on this podcast heaps of times, like I meditate absolutely every day. I swear by it. but like it's just good to hear to say that how far you've come, and initially you were the skeptic yourself, and now you're the teacher. You know, it's the full 360 circle.
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting transition. And I was actually chatting to a mate today about it, and they were asking me about when I was younger and all this, and they're like, "Wow, you really have come a long way." Like I was not open at all.
Yeah.
Like if I was to always say, if someone would have told me, even after I'd been meditating for a little while, that I'd be a meditation teacher, I still would have said, "Go fuck yourself."
Yeah.
Like there's no chance. It's amazing how if you let go of your idea of how things are and should be and just allow some things to play out, it's amazing what can unfold when I kind of let go.
It seems like, I guess, the reason that, or the link that we've got to you in terms of getting you on this podcast is our mate Jordan Massman, and he said he wanted a big shout out, so there it is.
He got it, the big fella.
But he's come full 360 as well, full circle. Like he's all into it, and he said that you really helped him in terms of overcoming some things. Do you want to sort of just elaborate on like the change that you've seen in him? I mean, you don't have to go into too much personal detail, and if Massman wants to tell his story on this podcast, I'm sure he can, but just want to give some enlightenment of what change you've seen in him, what he's been able to do for himself.
Well, the brilliant thing about Jordan was, so the way we came about was I was brought in to do some, I did a talk for Robert Walters, right? And it was just a talk to like 70 of their staff. And I talked about stress and meditation, and what they decided afterwards, they'd offer like a select group that offer an opt-in to actually do the meditation course. And so he actually, to give him credit, he made that decision. It wasn't forced on him. Like he had the opportunity there to do it. And so there must have been something there in him there was a level of, skepticism, probably like, whatever, but he was still open-minded enough to go, you know what, I'm going to trust this guy and give it a crack. And instantly, like, he's told me how he shifted, but the way he carried himself throughout when I was teaching him was actually, he was really, really engaged and open, and would be one of the first to sort of share. And I was actually quite impressed when I look back at the group. Funnily enough, maybe contrary to what he would explain he was like before, he was actually really involved, and it was a great part of the crew. And we started chatting. I think we were chatting when he gave me a good call, and we were talking about coming. He wanted to introduce me to you guys. He was like, "Bro, like, it's just transformed how I operate. I'm so much calmer and confident in my awareness, and the way he deals with stress at work." And I was like, "Wow, man! Like, it's just pretty." I love sort of hearing that, because we worked together. And then he did his own thing. He stuck with it. Like, we hadn't spoken for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe 12 months, until he got in contact again. At least that long, I'd say. And he just stuck with it, and it just slowly but surely had kept evolving for me. I love hearing those stories. And the whole idea is that you become self-sufficient, right? The way I like to work is to teach you the stuff, and then you go and do it, not come back and be guided by me every time. And he took that on board and really he's run with it. So it's pretty cool to see.
I guess he wouldn't, I mean, obviously he's not the only person. So you must see it so much. How it must be incredible for you in your position to see how impactful good practice of meditation can be on your life.
Well, that's, every now and then I still get it. Like I talk about, there's still moments where I have like a level of imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I really, good enough to be teaching people this? Is it really, helping people? Because I think it is. I know it's helped me. And then I always ask students to send me I'll sometimes get random messages from people and be like, I got this, actually, interesting enough, I got a message from this guy who, I won't say his name. I went and did another company. I work with businesses. I work with private. I do group stuff. This is another business one where all I'd done was come in and did like a 70-minute workshop. And he emailed me. He sent me a message 8 months later to say, "Bro, you you transformed my life with me being open to meditation." He goes, "By hearing you speak and me being to it, I started doing it." He goes, "My whole world's changed." And I get that sort of stuff all the time randomly. And I'm like, that just reinforces what I do. I'm like, it isn't just some weird woo-woo esoteric bullshit. It actually works, whether you're in business, business management, or you're a yoga teacher. It works on the physiology and the brain and the nervous system. So that's pretty cool.
I love it.
Do you know what what does meditation look like for you? Like if you could run that through for me, because I'm not someone who does meditate. I've given it a try a couple of times and probably haven't gotten into it or stuck it out for as long as I probably should have. But what's your description of what meditation is?
So this is really a cool question, because this is where a lot of people have fallen off the wagon, is because they're like, I've tried to meditate, it's just not for me. I've tried, I can't do it, or whatever. And it's because meditation is almost like the word exercise. We all know we should be doing it, but what style is different to what other types that are out there. So what I find a lot of people do is they're like, I need to meditate, and they'll try like an app, for example, be guided, and they're like, yeah, the guy's voice, right? I kept thinking, or I couldn't get deep enough, or it's just not for me, and they stop. So to be like exercise, I need to exercise, and going and doing a spin class and going, I hate spin class, I'm not exercising again. You'll be like, well, there's a lot of different types of exercise that might work for you. So explore some different avenues. Now, the style that I have learned, I specialize in, and I swear by, is a technique that uses a mantra. So like a sound vibration, it's like a mantra that you whisper inside your mind. And I do it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, anywhere between minimal 10 minutes, maximum half an hour, depending how much time I have. And it's like I don't use it as a tool. I use it as a daily practice. So I don't wait till I'm feeling terrible to start meditating. I meditate every day, whether I'm feeling amazing or terrible. Just keeps me more resilient. So there's less experiences of me needing the tools down the track, if that makes sense. So my practice is like, it's a non-negotiable, just like I wouldn't leave the house without brushing my teeth, having a shower. It fits in that category for me. It's like I train 6 out of 7 days a week.
Did I hear you mention before it's about 20 minutes? Is that right?
The technique that I practice is prime time is twice a day for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. But there you go, eh? That's unreal. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you can go less. Probably 10 is probably the minimal you want to go, 10 minutes twice a day. But you also look at it, and just like with exercise, if you do 5 to 10 minutes exercise 3-4 times a week, do you think it's going to do much for you?
Right.
So that's probably the prime time, but longer isn't. Then also much longer isn't realistic for most people, because we're all busy. And also in the style that I work with, you don't actually need longer. It's designed to have that prime impact out of that sort of 10 to 20 minute mark.
Yeah. We mentioned off air just before coming on, I'm doing a bit of research on you. I noticed that it says you did a bit of 18 months of formal study in meditation. Now, I'm just wondering, what's 18 months of formal study meditation look like? And then also, and adding to that, can you elaborate on some of the science behind it, like something that's going to shock me, us?
So the style of technique that I teach and specialize in is called Vedic. It's a transcendental style of meditation, and unlike a lot of the other sort of techniques that are out there, which you can sometimes do like a weekend course and be able to do some guided stuff, to be able to practice this style of meditation, you have to have meditated regularly for at least a few years, so you've had the experience of meditating. And then there are two options. One is you can either go away to India and do 3 months intensive, where you're literally in India for 3 months and you do everything. It's nuts. Or there are some teachers, there are a few of the states, and there's like a couple of teachers here in Australia that offer that tuition in a integrated form, as in you do it over 18 or so months while you are still able to, because I wouldn't have learned if I had to go out to India for 3 months and just quit my job, and because who knows, right? And so in that 18 months, I studied the Vedic philosophy. So the Vedic philosophy is the body of knowledge that all yoga comes from, all meditation, and it's like this, the almost the Bible, I suppose, of this style of philosophy. So I studied that, and then I also studied working with the mantras. So the mantras are the main part of the practice, right? That really make it what it is. And so I studied also how to work with them and teach them to people. And then the third juicy component is then tying it into the neuroscience of stress release. So what I studied and learned is that I didn't realize, which is that this is the main fundamental of how this technique works, is that our bodies, from the day that we're born, we accumulate stress and tension in our bodies.
Yeah.
We hold on, we hang on to it, and we hang on to it, we hang on to it. And that piles up and accumulates in our nervous system. Now, the body's main way and the most efficient way for it to process and launder stress, tension, and fatigue is deep rest. The rest we get at nighttime when we go to sleep.
Sure.
So this is why we are currently, look at our society where anxiety, depression, stress, insomnia, they're normal, but they're not normal things. They should not be part of the normal way of living, but they've become normal because our nervous system is under so much pressure. And so when we meditate and use the style of meditation that I work with, we actually put the body into a different state of deep rest. And when our bodies get into this deep state of rest, it can use its natural intelligence, and I'll touch on that in a second, to start doing that laundering and processing of buildup of stress and tension and fatigue. Now, I use the term natural intelligence, and for some people, like, oh, here we go, he's talking woo-woo here. What I mean by that is, right, when you cut yourself.
This is great.
Like when you cut yourself, your body knows how to heal a cut. Do you tell it to? No. You get sick, your body heals. If you're a female, you can grow a baby inside of you. That's natural intelligence. Now, we spend so much of our days in survival mode, stress, hustle, getting shit done, worries, deadlines, social media, dates, big night to the piss. That's how we operate in survival. So our body doesn't have the energy to life. And so we need to give our bodies that time to get back into a level of balance so we can start doing that, working on the deep stuff, the root causes of a lot of the things that we're dealing with in our current, in our days, in terms of both mental and physical. So that was kind of a.
I just learned so much. I hope our audience did as well. That's just fantastic to hear. But it just makes sense, doesn't it? Like just to hear you say, no, like you're an expert in that field. It just makes total sense.
Yeah, it's because you sit there and you go, why am I like anxious and feeling all this? And because when we're born, we're not born to be anxious all the time. Like anxiety and stress is a biological response which can help us survive, but unfortunately, it's meant to be chronic. I mean, acute. Sorry, we experience a level of like maybe a bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress, and that can help us deal with the situation of survival. But then we're supposed to go back down again. Yeah. But we don't go back down again. We have this experience where something makes us, we deem it as stressful, or we're picked on at school, or we have an argument with our partner, and we recycle it and go over it and then go over it again and then tell our friends about it. And then we go, next time I want to say this. And so we're constantly piling it on, which is putting us under real pressure.
I think I'm so glad we got you on as an expert in that area. I'm gonna ask you now, turning from mindfulness to the Momentum Lifestyle Project. I was doing a bit of research on that, and that's a winner as well. Those 4 words: mindset, muscle, mission, masculinity. I assume the whole thing's based around those 4 words. Can I get you to, elaborate on that for us? Why those 4 words? Why mindset? Why muscle? Why mission? Why masculinity?
So the whole concept of momentum came about when Blake, Dylan, and myself we looked at the state of the men's space, men's mental health, ourselves, our group of mates, and we're like, none of us are okay. None of us are at the top of our game. Whether we're willing to admit it or not is a different story, but none of us are where we should be. And it's taken us a combined 25 years of study and research and personal practice and failing and then trying again to develop the tools and knowledge that have helped us get to a place where we're now like, we're pretty solid. And like I've had, as I mentioned, like severe anxiety. I was big Peter Pan syndrome, destructive drinking patterns, very unaware, ego-driven. Dylan was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, dropped out of uni and go live with his parents to deal with it again. And he had an amazing upbringing with his family as well. Blake himself, he literally had rock bottom where in 1 year, he became bankrupt, lost his missus, got fired from 3 jobs, and was loneliest ever been in his life. Yeah. So we've all been to our own different bottoms, I suppose, in a way. Yeah. And then we lent on each other and the tools that we'd learned to help us bring us back. And so we created momentum with our 4 pillars to be like, okay, what are the main categories? What are the areas that if every guy could learn at least a component under each, they have the tools to deal with life in a much, much more solid and comprehensive way. And we came up with those 4 pillars. So, you know, mindset is obviously everything to do with the mind. That's meditation, understanding limiting beliefs, you know, triggers and because a lot of this, and awareness and understanding and integrating our own egos, which is really, really powerful stuff. And then the muscle is not only, because we're all interested in being, you know, physically strong, but when we talk about muscle, it's also, you know, like emotional muscle, you know. And so muscle for us, we like to integrate. It's like, and we have this under the muscle component, we're big on developing the balance between backbone and heart. So there's the grit and the fucking let's go, but then the heart to have that sort of awareness and openness and warmness, and that, so we're developing both those muscles as opposed to just these ones, you know, the bicep muscles, which is what we focus on. So we kind of like muscles one that we kind of like. If you work with us, we actually don't focus that much on nutrition and exercise, but it's more about what are the other fundamentals, like even working on your level of ability to deal with stress will impact how much muscle you can put on. We have to fall on into the concept of being mean and being a man. If you are over 80% of males have a core masculine energy, and a fundamental driver of masculine energy is to have a level of purpose and mission, right? So we've always been, we are providing, we are hunting, we are working towards something. And as a human being, really, because both men and women both have masculine and feminine energy. Some men have stronger feminine, and that's totally fine. And this kind of starts leading to the masculinity component. But for men in particular, it's really, really fundamental for us to have something we're working towards. What's our purpose? What's our mission? And it's got to be something greater than just us, greater than making money, you know, greater than getting the job title. And one of the biggest gaps we're finding with a lot of blokes that we work with, they're like, mate, I've got money, I've got the missus, I've got the family, but there's something missing, and it's mission. What is their mission in life? What's your legacy? What are you going to leave in this world? At the end of your life, what would you like to be known as leaving behind? And so that's why mission, and that gets me fired up, was talking about it, like, what the fuck do you want to work towards here? What are you going to create? And then masculinity is actually embodying, you know, your version of man. It's understanding that being sensitive and compassionate and empathetic and having feelings isn't weak. You know, showing vulnerability isn't weak. That is a strong part of being a masculine man, because masculinity has a lot of traditional stereotypes, which is like, you gotta be big, strong, tough, push through, you be sorted, you're stoic, good with girls, athletic. And I've even sometimes asked, and this comes from both men and women, because I've even in the past I've sort of asked girls, what do you look for to a guy? Like, oh, I like a masculine man. I'm like, what does that mean to you? And even then it's still sometimes that traditional stereotype. So does that mean that a guy who's skinnier, loves playing music, and is really sensitive and compassionate and really good with people is less of a man? Fuck no, he's not. He's his own version of man. And that's what masculinity embodies, right? This holistic, authentic confidence of who you are and ownership of that. And so we're really big on peeling back the masks and the layers that we all put on as men to try to show up and validate ourselves in the world, to peel those things back and allow who you really are to come forward and have confidence in that. Because that's powerful when you really own that stuff. So they're the 4 pillars, and why we find that they're so important as a holistic approach. Because I think traditionally the main thing blokes would focus on would be muscle, and this muscle to be a man. And it's like, no. We focus on the other 3 things even more. So that's the pillars.
Do you find that all 4 sort of have equal weight? You don't focus on one more than another?
They kind of build upon each other. So, for example, the mindset component, if you aren't meditating daily, and if you aren't actively working on understanding your own triggers, belief systems, thought patterns, blind spots, you know, ego, it's very, very hard for you then to build on top of that and get clear on what your mission or meaning is going to be, or to understand what your true version of masculinity is, or understand, oh, wow, maybe when I'm out with my mates, I use the mask of being a ladies' man as like a front to show my validation. And so it's really important that the mindset's kind of the foundation. The mindset and the muscle are kind of those foundation components. And then we build on top of that with, okay, now we've got the brain, nervous system, and the awareness starting to shift. Now we can start bringing on more stuff. Now we can start looking at, okay, let's create some sort of mission for you. Let's look at what masculinity means to you. So they kind of build upon each other, I suppose.
Yeah, I really like that mission's in there. I mean, recently I've stumbled across Ben Crow and all the work he does at Mojo Crow. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with his work?
No.
No. He's all about what's your purpose. He works with Dusty Martin and Ash Barty and stuff, and it's all about what's your purpose.
Oh, I think I have heard that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are you getting out of bed for? On a wet Monday morning? What's getting you out of bed? And yeah, obviously mission, purpose, interlinked, same thing. So I'm really glad that's in there, because I'm finding it. You know, I'm researching that at the moment myself, trying to identify, I guess, for myself, what's my purpose / mission. And I find the work behind it fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's really also because like motivation comes and goes. You're not motivated every morning. Like, I'll be lying if I say I wake up every morning, I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to go. Let's get this. Yeah. Sometimes I feel shitty and down and I don't want to go train, but I have a level of there's something bigger than me. There's a mission I have, and I'm like, nah, I'm going. So I know I'm working towards something else here that's beyond my little bullshit chatter of staying in my comfy bed this morning or getting a little pity story and allow myself to go down this. So also having that is a really good driver for when motivation's not there. Yeah,
I love it. That's good stuff, that.
You know, I've got a bit of a question around the sort of masculinity piece. You know, it's so, I guess the stereotype of stoic men is so just kind of ingrained in today's society. How long have you sort of seen it take to sort of start having that initial change to, like, you know, that there is strength in vulnerability and being able to show your emotion in men?
Well, personally, I had an interesting swing. So I went from, I was aggressive, validated myself on women, drinking, my athletic ability. So I was brought up. That's what put me into the cool group at school, was because I was good at sport and I did okay with girls. So that was developed my identity. It's like, that's what it is. You push through. I remember being told at footy when I'm playing under 17s footy and I had an injury, like, just got to push through sometimes, mate. I'm like, I'm injured. So we're already told they're not to feel our bodies. And so from a young age, that's how I developed. And then funnily enough, I call it the snag trap, the sensitive new age guy. So, and the only reason I looked into it, because I was like, I think chicks like the sensitive new age guy now. So maybe I'm going to slide over this way. And I went too far into this and I actually lost some of my boundaries and lost some of my natural grit and almost became a bit of this like floaty, sensitive, kind of nice guy and went too far the opposite way. And it took me a while to finally get my head straight and go, hang on a second, I was going to find my come back to the center of what is the true balance of both of those sides for me. Now, I feel at a greater scale, we are getting there. We're still I still think we're a long, long way off. And a lot of it is because currently most of the guys that we've looked up to are from that slightly older generation. So we're kind of that newer wave. And still, I would argue that the guys that maybe think or be open to some of this stuff we're a very small percentage. So I still think we're sort of another generation below that starting to shift. Because even now, like a lot of, you know, the dads and grandpas and uncles are still, not all obviously, but there's still a level of that old way of being that they're quite stuck in. So it's getting there, but we're still, it's a slow shift. But even in leadership and performance now, there's a lot more emphasis being put on emotional intelligence, which is compassion, awareness, self-regulation, as opposed to just intelligence or IQ. And so it's starting to shift. And even like you're seeing in footy clubs now, there's a slowly but surely, like most of them are starting to bring in some meditation, and you know it's starting to get there, but it's still it's a slow chip away.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything that we've spoken about so far in this podcast, it's like, it's my goal that it's all just mainstream and normalized. So, that's, I think in the world would be a happier place if everyone meditated, once a day, and, brought into the whole, what you're doing at the Momentum Lifestyle. That's like, it'd just be it'd be a better place. We're still sort of on the outer, I guess, in terms of percentage that have brought into this stuff, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's moving, man. Like even the space itself. But when we came into it, part of the reason why we do things the way we do is the men's space itself, we believe, has a bit of a branding problem.
Yep.
There's a lot of groups that are either quite like overly, oh bro, man, huggy, and we'll talk about our feelings. And for a guy from the outside who's just new, that's not attractive. Like I know when I was first, I was like, I want to go to a men's group. What do you mean? Like, and then there's also the other extreme where it's like, let's go to the jungle and eye gaze naked. And it's, full on. So and they all have their place. I also want to be aware, I'm not disrespecting each groups that are like that, because they have their place.
Yeah.
But for a lot of guys who are just like, I kind of like having my beers on a Friday and watching the footy, and I kind of have a bit of anxiety, but I'm all right. I wouldn't mind trying something. What is there that's relatable? And that's why we came into it and do things the way we do. Like we still in our group programs, our 12-week mentorship. At the beginning, we always do a bit of shit chat and there's a bit of banter. We muck around and it's all right, now we're getting serious. Let's learn some stuff. So it's keeping that balance of, you can still be lads and muck around, just learn some cool stuff along the way.
Yeah, and that's what you said at the start of this podcast, is that yes, you do all this meditation stuff and mindfulness stuff, but you still like a beer, you still like still social, like still very regular bloke. So good.
Yeah, I try to keep that as, I haven't disappeared off into the ether just yet.
Not yet.
I'm sure you'll transcend soon, Janoah.
Oh mate, I'm gonna be in line. I'll be levitating soon. Don't worry about that.
You said at the beginning you were really worried about the sort of, like right at the beginning when you were learning to meditate, you were worried about what your mates would think of you when you were going off to these meditation classes. Something that kind of gets highlighted in pretty much all of our episodes is that sort of big social connection, that once you kind of let someone know that you're doing something, you find that they give the opposite reaction to what you're going to think. They're always supportive of it. They're always going to, they've got your back, sort of thing. Was that what you found when you started telling your mates about meditating?
Yeah. As soon as I was like, this is what I do, boys, and just owned it. When people judge you or they, give you shit about it, it's just coming from a place of fear for themselves. It's literally that. They just don't understand it. And what you're doing is out of their comfort zone. So to protect themselves, they're going to make you sound like an idiot or give you shit or whatever it is. And so I found that when I did start to open up about it, a lot of them are like, oh, okay. They're in, most of them, heaps of my mates have learnt now. My brother, my dad, my mum, people that weren't necessarily open to it at all have now ended up not only asking about it, but came to learn because they're like, I'm not satisfied where I'm at. Plus, you're kind of different. You're not as much as an arsehole as you used to be. You're a bit more, open-minded. You're aware. I look, looking better. I look better, now than I did fucking 10 years ago, like physically and the rest. Like, so there's other reasons where like, we just like do your thing and stay in your lane and just do it. I don't try to get too preachy to my mates. Like if they want to ask, I'll talk to them about it, but I let it go. I've got like my best mate, for example, he's open to it, but he's actually never properly learned. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like if you want to come in your own time. And I've found that just doing my thing and just stepping up and owning it with confidence has led to most people, you're 100% right, boys, is being really accepting and going, good on you for doing it.
Yeah.
It's an awesome thing to hear. Do you know what sort of piece of advice would you give for someone just starting out to learn to meditate? Like what would you get them to do?
So firstly, I'd get them to look at what their current definition of or idea of meditation is. And I'll frame a couple of the most common barriers. One is that you've got to be able to control your mind or clear your thoughts. Another big barrier is around it being sort of religious and woo-woo. You got to sit somewhere awkward and all the rest. And another one is that it's like a waste of time, or I'm too busy. And so what I would ask them first to do is to let go of all their preconceived ideas around it and look at it as something. It's an investment of time, just like doing exercise is going to make you feel, look, perform better. Meditation is doing the same for your brain and nervous system. And then be open to trying a few different types out. If you've tried one app, you didn't like his voice or whatever, try something else.
Yeah. And
potentially look for a teacher. It's just like you're going to learn a brand new sport and you go try to do it yourself. It's just like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. It doesn't feel right. My technique's off. It's just not working. Why am I doing it like that? And I would argue is then if you're interested in seeing some change, is to find a coach or teacher or someone that can help and explain you through the process as well, so you understand it. And then, just like most things, you want to be good at most things, you got to train and practice or have an expert to talk you through it. So I'd argue that you'd put the same effort into meditation, and also don't get attached to the idea that meditation is going to be beautiful and calm and this state of blissful thoughtlessness, because it's not. Meditation is doing the work. Your brain and nervous system are doing a lot of processing. And so you'll think a lot. I still think 8 years down the track, I meditate and I still think. Thinking's part of the process. I often feel uncomfortable when I meditate. It's because my body's releasing stress. Stress can feel uncomfortable, but we're so not used to feeling the discomfort and being in our bodies. We're like, I'm out. I'm getting out of here. So be okay with the discomfort. Try a couple of new things and really be open-minded to it. Because if you're, and this is my opinion, if you're not meditating regularly, you're behind the eight ball. There's 5 decades of research. Look at the high performers who swear by it. Look into what your barrier is and see if you're willing to step past that level of fear and lack of understanding to give it a real red hot crack.
What's sort of the minimum amount of time that someone should dedicate to meditation session? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15?
Well, look, I always try to make it as accessible as possible. So at the beginning, I say if the best, you can at least start with 5 minutes a day on an app. Start with 5 minutes down an app. But to be honest, I would argue you want to be doing at least 10 to 20 minutes.
Sure.
And again, like the way when I've worked with students, my whole approach is I work with beginners, skeptics, and people that hate apps or struggle with apps. And most people, when they get taught properly, they go from meditating 1 minute so they can sit for 15, 20 minutes and it's fine. So I'd say you want to be doing at least 10 minutes to allow your body to really get into that state.
Yeah. Right.
I have so many questions and my mind just keeps going blank every time we finish because I got to like process what you've just said. And like also like my own like thinking about my own experience, like I'm kind of fall into that boat of like I don't think I like the apps, and maybe I haven't found the right sort of style of meditation for myself. So I think after this, I'm going to give it a good crack and really try and find what works for me and the best way to go. Because, you know, Luke, you constantly tell me how much meditating's helped and how it sort of gets you ready for the day. And Janoah, hearing the way that it sort of changed your life and helped you change the lives of others, maybe I should get into it, put a lot more effort into figuring what meditation should look like for me.
But better late than never.
You know, what if you looking back on sort of, you know, where you started and where you are now, if you could give yourself a piece of advice right back at, let's say, the age of 18 as the sort of generic number that we always pick for everybody, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
18?
Yeah.
Would I listen to myself? It's more around like it's open your mind. Like open your mind. Don't hang on to things so tight for how you think they should be. It was really like, you don't know, open your mind, open your mind. Because I was really the opposite. I was very my way, very driven and not open. So that'd be my biggest thing. If I would have listened, I don't know. I probably would have tell myself where to go. but yeah, just open your mind, bro. Like try lots of different things.
My last question for you is, what's this whole podcast experience taught you, besides the fact that I'm illiterate with first and last names?
What it's taught me that like, every time I chat to like good people like yourself, there's just more and more people out in this world who are open-minded and keen to make a difference and willing to give it a crack. And so it's a nice breath of fresh air. Like you've both been pretty enthusiastic and open-minded and excited, and you still muck around and have a bit of fun. And so that you kind of match how I like to do things. So it's just reminding me and reinforcing that there's more and more of this out in the space, which is cool.
Yeah, bloody oath there is.
Awesome. Thank you for the words. We appreciate any sort of compliment that's given to us from a guest. I think that's a really nice sort of place to wrap the podcast up. Janoah, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about this incredible sort of meditation and mental space journey that you've been on. And I look forward to hopefully we have you on again and we can see how far we've all come, and maybe I've found out where I can meditate in the best way for me is, and other people, the listeners, might have also felt that as well.
Yeah, mate, I can help work you through that. Don't worry about that.
Bloody oath. I love that, mate. Love that, Janoah.
I look forward to that. To all the listeners, if you want to be a part of the Line and Length podcast, please reach out on whether it be any of our socials to myself or Kels. We're happy to have you on, and we'll leave you with the like the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you all on the next episode.
Perfect.
This episode of This Is Your Line and Length was brought to you by Picker Financial Solutions. Picker Financial Solutions can help you with your financial well-being. This includes restructuring your finances, purchasing your first home, or purchasing an investment property. To reach out to Picker Financial Solutions, see the links in this episode's notes. If this podcast has made you realize that you or a friend would benefit from having a chat, please don't hesitate to reach out to experts like Lifeline, Beyond Blue, or a medical professional. In the meantime, take care, look after your lid, and look forward to the next episode of This Is Your Line and Length.